It is the final word, season 17, episode 28. Everyone loving their NordVPN at the moment. Great feedback from our colleagues in doing the Champions Trophy who are using it routinely, shall we say, Jeff, in different parts of Pakistan and Dubai through the 3.5 weeks that they were there. Reinforcing what we've been saying all along, that this is what you need when you travel. And we know that the final word community love to travel. We know they love to see the world, see the cricket, and beyond that as well. And it's like as necessary as bringing your passport to the airport is having your VPN sorted out before you leave home. You don't want to realize on night one that, I haven't got my ducks in a row here. That's frustrating. That's your time. That's your relaxation time, not your time to sort out life admin. What you want to do is click one button and have access to servers in 111 countries.
And you might find yourself in a country, let's not name any at the moment, that where maybe it's illegal to use a VPN because they don't want you doing that, but you also don't want them accessing your traffic because maybe they have, security services who are monitoring things in a way that might be unhelpful. Not to suggest that you're doing anything wrong, just that you don't necessarily want other people reading your mail some of the time. So cybersecurity is a big part of it. You can shield your online activities from the ISP that's providing the connection, also from hackers who often monitor unsecure connections like the ones in hotels and airports and public networks like that. You can scan any files you download. It can find malicious software. You can block ads. You can get alerts about anything that's going on the dark web if any of your credentials end up in packages that get stolen and sold, because that's a thing that happens a fair bit as well. So look after yourself. Security is important on the internet. nordvpn.com/TFW for the discount codes, the free months, and you can get more free months if you buy certain packages. There's a whole lot of added extras rolled in.
That's it, and they don't sting you at the end either. So I've just finished a trial period with my internet provider, and they're trying to triple the freight. I'm like, come on, boys, come on. Get serious here. We're not doing that. I will call up and I will complain, and ultimately you will give me what I want, because that's what telecommunications companies have to do. Otherwise, they end up scrapping around on the internet with their NordVPN. Right. So a few bits and bobs to finish here. We'll start with Harry Brook. This was an interesting one, Jeff. So out of the IPL again.
Yeah, I was puzzled by this, found this curious. So he pulled out of the IPL last year, and there were understandable reasons around that. His grandmother had died. They were very close, family upset, and he decided that he wanted to be at home. That's fine. That makes sense. To this time, the citation is that he needs rest. He's had a busy period for England. He needs to recharge for more England duties. And that thing is also entirely reasonable and true, because England have an insane international schedule. England and India play even more than Australia do. They work their players to the bone. He's all over the formats at the moment. He's being relied on in one-day cricket as well as Test cricket. But why put yourself up for it? Like, there's after you've pulled out the first time, surely you can look at the schedule you've got. You can look at how taxed you're going to be through until March for the end of the Champions Trophy. You can look at the massive summer you've got ahead with 5 tests against India, a test against Zimbabwe, and then working your way up into the Ashes at the end of the year. And you can say, there's no way that I'm going to be in a fit state to play, because you do it twice. I mean, you bail out once, you're good enough to get another contract at some point, but you bail out twice. You're messing around a team. They've done their bidding. They've allocated their funds. They haven't bid on other players because they bid on you, and then you've bailed out. It means they've got to turn to a remnants pool of players rather than having the ability to spend up bigger in the auction in the first place. So there is a cost to the teams, and I don't spend a lot of time feeling bad for IPL franchises and feeling sorry for them. But as far as the people trying to put an 11 together, that is extremely unhelpful to have a player bail out. So I would think he's done himself damage in terms of getting picked up in the future.
Yeah, I would think so as well. And now they've got that new rule that came in about 6 months ago that if you leave an IPL having been drafted, you run the risk of being banned for the next 2 editions. So it's £600,000 he's leaving on the table up to that at Delhi this year, but it's the prospective earnings. In some ways, I admire this. Like, this isn't the first time that Brook stepped away and feeling like he can. Like, we've seen players who have felt trapped in previous situations, and it's had a real effect on their mental health. And No one would want that for a guy who's so prodigiously talented, 3 format player for England, almost certainly about to take on the white ball captaincy as well. He cited that in his social media post, saying that he wanted to focus on England matters at the moment. But yeah, I guess it says a little bit about the economy of modern cricket, where he can run the risk of losing potentially millions of pounds in favour of prioritising his short-term planning and health and fitness and recharging the battery. So there's both sides of the coin. It's just more like, had they won the Champions Trophy, I suppose he would have felt energised to have kept on keeping on. But it to me, it reflected just how full on it is to be in an international side that's underperforming, and what that can do to the psyche or the mindset of one of the most important players.
Broadly, a player opting out of the IPL to focus on national commitments is good. That reflects well on, that's the sort of thing that people like you and me and the kind of cricket that we enjoy. We'd love to see players putting Test cricket first in the way that Mitchell Starc did for a long time. So in favour of that, there aren't many players in the world who have the luxury to be able to think that way. Only the ones who get paid well enough from the richest 3 boards, really, who can make those sort of decisions, particularly repeatedly. But I just don't understand why you'd put yourself up for the draft in the first place. That seems like there's not much thought that's gone into initially opting in.
Yep, felt like a good idea at the time, kind of energy there for sure. Jeff, we were talking about day-night cricket earlier. Just an interesting one out of the West Indies over the weekend, one of my colleagues in the Caribbean sent through to me. So Cricket Australia, according to reports, are very keen for Jamaica to be a day-night test match, the third test in that sequence, the 3-test series between the West Indies and Australia in June and July.
That already was. That was confirmed.
Yeah. Well, certainly it was like, because of the announcement the government had made about the restoration of the lights at Sabina Park. Well, reports on the weekend that it's not going to be ready in time. Now, this will add a degree of complexity to the broadcast arrangements. I'm told that Fox are going to do that series. Now, these things will play out in their usual way. Fox didn't do the most recent series that Australia played away in Sri Lanka, but let's assume they do for the sake of the hypothetical. Might they have done so on the basis of there being a day-night test match? A little bit like we were saying earlier about the sesquicentenary test match and what it can do having more cricket being played when people are typically more awake. So, it's obviously just one report that I'm going off here, but just one to watch when it comes to scheduling and what might play out in the Windies, because we were told that a major part of how the third test was slotted in there was the prospect of a day-night test match. So might that be that it doesn't go to Jamaica and it goes to Barbados, possibly? I wonder. I don't know.
Well, the first one's in Barbados.
That's right, yeah.
I mean, you mean would they shift the order around so that they?
No, I'm saying that might they just say, because we know that Kensington Oval has lights, right? Or do they actually? They do have lights, but do they?
They played night T20s there in the T20 World Cup.
No, right, they did. It was the final was played in the day for the Indian time zone. That's right. They played the final starting at, you were there, Jeff. Was it lunchtime start or something? Because they wanted to make sure they got maximum coverage in the other part of the world.
I think it was. They were early games in that time zone, and then very late they were finishing at midnight or past midnight to squeeze in on the other side. I don't think that a day-night test would make enough difference to an Australian TV schedule, because that part. So Jamaica's a different time zone to Barbados. There's an hour difference between the two, but you're looking at tests that are finishing at 7 or 8 in the morning, normally Australian time, which means a day-nighter would be finishing at 11 in the morning, something like that. I don't think there'd be enough. It's still not going to be anywhere near prime time that it would make much of a difference in terms of audience viewing, I wouldn't have thought. And also the third test of the series, that's potentially going to be the least watched one. Like a close series, people will watch the third test, but a series that isn't close, the first test is your best bet for audiences. So if they wanted a different schedule, they would surely be gunning for the first test to be the day-nighter. So I think it would just be more about, maybe it's just about Cricket Australia wanting to continue to play a few pink ball games where they can to keep their players attuned to it. Yeah, and that's fine. Right? This kind of comes back to our earlier point. We're not against pink ball cricket. Got a pink ball in my hand right now. Some of my favourite cricket balls are pink, but some of my best friends are pink cricket balls. But no, it's not about the concept. It's about what we said earlier. It's about that particular test match. They want to play pink ball test matches elsewhere or other parts of the year. Go for it. Just not that week in March in 2027. Crude segue. Staying with cricket that's being played under lights. The Australian Masters 11. It takes a fair bit to get our attention. A veterans tournament takes a fair bit for us to pay attention.
But I tell you what, Shane Watson's got us paying attention. He's gone huge in this tournament, captaining the Aussie Masters. He made 107 against the Windies. I think that was in a loss. 110 not out against India, 122 not out against South Africa, all at the top of the list. Australia are making like 270 in these games. Absolutely wild. As someone said on social media yesterday, it's going to be like a social tournament where they kick Watto out of it. They go, no, you're not allowed to play anymore. You're destroying you're ruining it for everybody else. So great to see Watto going well. And indeed, our colleague in Sri Lanka only a couple of weeks ago, Bryce McGain, bowling up a storm with his beautiful leg breaks at age 52. He's still a glorious cricketer. And Xavier Doherty, who is another member of our cricket media flock who played with us this time last year, Jeff, picked up a fifer. So they're going nicely, but it's all about Shane Watson.
So was Doherty foxing in the media game? Was he holding back? Because he's out there taking 5 against former internationals. Couldn't take one against the New Zealand media side.
That was definitely my fault. Like I fucked that up as captain. Like there's no disputing that. I got the matchup wrong with 2 inside the circle at the start and bowled into Willie Nichols, very good cricketer, left-hander bowling into the arc. That wasn't well thought out from me.
He's picking up 5 against former internationals.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put them slightly above Willie Nichols.
No, it was more
no disrespect to the New Zealand media manager.
It was more that he should have been bowling at almost any other time than when I bowled him. Anyway, not to say that's something sticking with me for 12 months. That means nothing.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. Still being angry with yourself over a decision that was made a year ago that had no material effect on your life. I've never heard this happen before. This has never come up in our relationship. But I'm heartened to know if there is somewhere in the world that Shane Watson, the Latin designation that Bigus Regus is out there launching some balls over deep mid wicket, which is what I assume he's doing, getting that front leg out the way. Probably trimming down a bit from the World Cup where he was posting those photos of himself exploding out of the shirt in the commentary box because the wardrobe department that was like they were glad wrapping him in those sort of synthetic, those polyester shirts that all the poor buggers on TV are sweating through one every 5 minutes as they go up and down staircases. But yeah, he's obviously in nick, and I'm glad that he's launching a few into orbit.
Also in India, the WPL, the group stage is still going. We sometimes talk about the BBL.
Like last week, I thought we're near the end of this.
I genuinely thought when I was preparing last week's weekly, I'm like, we must be in the semi-finals now, but not to be. So it turns out they only play the games on certain days of the week, presumably to maximise the TV audience. But I had a look and Delhi had already qualified first over a week ago. So they'll be playing the winner of Mumbai and Gujarat. Mumbai beat Gujarat overnight by 9 runs. Harmanpreet made a half century for the winners, and then Amelia Kerr picked up 3 for in their defence of 175. So Mumbai will play Gujarat at home, and the winner of that will play Delhi. The UP Warriors and RCB are out of the tournament. Leading the runs are the usual suspects: Nat Sivabrunt, Elise Perry, Shafali Verma, Meg Lanning, and Ash Gardner. And leading the wickets after a performance last night, Amelia Kerr, top of the pops. Then you've got Hayley Matthews, who also took wickets last night. Your fave, Jess Jonathan, Shikha Pandey, and Georgia Wareham, the Aussie all-rounder. So we'll keep... We've got one more group game into the finals, and we'll give the finals a little bit more attention than we have the group stage so far. Speaking of...
There's still a glimmer. There's just still a glimmer for me that maybe in another year or two, maybe Meg Lanning goes, you know what? Still hitting him all right. Maybe I'll pull on the shirt again.
What I will say for Meg Lanning is she is moving on with her post-cricket life in her own way, and that's great. I'm really happy for her. She was involved last week, so she's taken on a directorship at the Lyrebird Foundation. So they played their inaugural game last week. This is an organisation that's emerged from Fairbreak, which we devoted quite a bit of attention to across a couple of years. They played their first ever game, an invitational against an Indigenous 11 at Bowral at the Bradman Oval. This is the next Sean Martin project. And Sean Martin was the man who, in the early days, was trying to get something resembling the Women's Big Bash League up. Then he was ahead of the curve on trying to get a women's IPL up. He started Fairbreak, and there's been some turnover in that organisation. And he started the Lyrebird Foundation, which, again, is about advocacy and about women in cricket more widely. Anything that Sean does is worth paying attention to, and Meg Lanning signed on as a director. So we'll keep an eye on that ourselves. Staying with the women's game, New Zealand defeated Sri Lanka in their one-day series, which is being played for as part of the as part of the ICC Championship. Georgia Plimmer, who was a World Cup winner last year, Jeff, made her first international century in the third game there. So the first was washed out. New Zealand won comfortably in the last couple. But Plimmer, who played an important role in that World Cup win last year in Dubai, her first international ton, 112 she made.
The cheeky chipmunk, as per Daniel Norcross, who was rather taken with her enthusiastic approach to the game. And also Maddie Green made not her first international 100, but just about her first international 100. She made one against a pretty weak Ireland team years ago. And in Maddie Green, I've talked about a bit on the show, who's a player who I love the potential of. I love the talent of. I love the glimpses you see of the talent, and she's just never nailed it record-wise across a really long career now. She's 32. She's been around forever, but, brilliant fielder. Occasionally shows you these glimpses with the bat and rarely delivers, but did make 100 at just about a run a ball, which was the only other one that she's made aside from that Ireland one, which was 2018, something like that. So one for her in ODIs, never got one in T20s, never got close, never made a 50 in T20s, I think, for New Zealand, but did notch one up there. And Sri Lanka took New Zealand apart not that long ago, so it was important for New Zealand to show that they can beat a team like that in a series like that comprehensively after a washout in the first game.
And Absent Millie Kerr as well, who's their captain at the moment. And interesting that Chamari Atapatu played the games here, not the WPL games. So that tension that we see a lot in men's cricket, which we talked about earlier in reference to the Aussie one-day team and T20 domestic tournaments, well, we're seeing the early days of that. This is a bit of a direct hit, right? And there would have been players who would have been available for both tournaments. No clashes next week in the regional women's T20 qualifiers. I wouldn't ordinarily raise this in any depth, but just interesting this is ticking over. The most important cricket, some teams that we're really quite interested in, that they'll play in 2025 is next week in Buenos Aires. So there's 4 out of 12 spots in the Women's T20 World Cup of 26 will be from the world. So 8 get automatic qualification and 4 come from this process. And that global qualifier already has Scotland and Bangladesh in it from last year's World Cup. So you get 1 team from the Americas, 2 from Asia, 2 from Europe, 1 from the East Asia Pacific, and 2 from Africa. So that all comes later. But the Americas qualifier is over the next 2 weeks as a double round robin. And because we've had so much to do with the Brazilian women, I will be watching that closely. This was the tournament where Laura Cardoso took her 5 wickets in an over a couple of years ago as a 15-year-old. So to give some context as to what they're doing here.
One of them was a run out. I'm just going to throw that in there.
Yes,
5 wickets fell. And she took
5 wickets fell. But America
and 2 run-outs, thereabouts.
Yeah, so it's America, Canada, Brazil, and Argentina, and kind of comes back to my previous point about fair break. Quite a lot of these players are high class. So only one to get to go through to that global qualifier. And as we've seen with other countries on the journey up the pyramid or up the rankings chart or whatever, making it to a global qualifier is massive. We saw that with Thailand. So whichever of those 4 teams gets there, it'll be huge for their development, and we'll see how they go over the next little while. And last little bit here from Associate Land is that John Davison, the World Cup hero to many of us from Canada via Victoria, via South Australia back in 2003, he's taking over Italy and the Italy men's job. Same time frame we're talking about here, same kind of qualification process for the men's 26 T20 World Cup. Italy are in the European regional finals in late June in the Netherlands. Now, 2 teams go through from that. Their opposition is the Dutch, the Scottish, Guernsey, and Jersey. Now, they'll win the last 2 games, right?
Yeah.
But the Dutch and Scotland...
clothing round. Everybody's an item you can wear.
But with the Dutch and Scotland, I mean, Scotland were outstanding at the last World Cup, and the Netherlands made it through to the late stage of it 2 cycles ago in 2022. So on paper, they should shit it in. But... Joe Burns is captain. They got him with a full-time coach in Davison. The Menenti brothers, there's word that Jake Doran, who's been gunning it in Shield cricket for a number of years now, Tim Ward, who's had a great couple of years as well, having moved states, they're both eligible. Matt Fotier, who used to play for Victorian Quick, he's in the Italian squad as well. So you throw that together, they could contend, they could compete in that European qualifier, get themselves into the global qualifier, and then, anything could happen. So, interesting stuff going on as we start to build towards the next major tournament where the associates could theoretically make it there in 2026.
We can dream. I mean, it's an old line, but surely they can get Joe Scuderi back involved somehow or other. Surely, just emotionally, just spiritually, just to run the orange slices, something like that. But yeah, this heavy Australian crossover that they've brought in an Australian sort of Canadian coach as well. They will be up against it, given how well the Dutch and the Scots have done at the higher level. It was that last little bit from Pakistan, that news line that came in, that was very much in our areas, that a Pakistani first-class cricketer was dismissed while asleep, as in timed out, as in didn't make it to the field because having a nap. Now, I've heard a lot of stories about cricketers having naps and having to get up and get ready quickly, but not really about ones who didn't make it to the middle. What's the background on this?
It's Saud Shaquille. Isn't he ranked like number 7 in the world right now as ICC test batter? He Ramadan playing hours. This is really interesting. They start their first session at 7:30 p.m. and their third session runs through until 2:30 a.m. You know, we talked about clever scheduling. This is exactly that, right? Let the players play.
Day-night cricket.
Mark Robinson might say, "Let the players play, Jared. Let the players play at the right times of day around their fasting."
So this is because they can't drink water during daylight hours. And so the only way they can exert themselves over a long period of time in the heat is to do it at night.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess Saud Shaquille's just gotten it wrong, and he genuinely was not at the ground when he was scheduled to come in the middle of a hat trick. So it was all a bit chaotic. But yeah, anyway, so that's one of those ones that went nuts on social media during the week. And Jeff, just to round out the show, because there was like lots of like England news, but I didn't want to like do any in major depth. But what did you make of Rob Key saying that it wouldn't be mad for Ben Stokes to become the one-day captain?
Oh, kind of done that, haven't they? I mean, not that he was specifically leading that side, but that he was kind of spiritually leading that side. And then he led the kids team that came in when they had the COVID thing that wiped out the whole team, didn't he? He came in and
he's retired.
That, but
I guess the point is he's retired once and come back already. So didn't
he retire again though?
Yeah, he's retired
again after the work. So he's retired twice already from one-day cricket.
I think Key's point is that you'd be mad not to consider a great leader, But I kind of feel like they might be mad to even consider looking backwards when they've desperately got to start regenerating before
moving forward 2 years ago, and they didn't, and they're paid for it.
On England, and that's coming out of the England review, right? Because there's a review after this. On England reviews, looking forward to seeing the women's review. That must be due, right? Didn't Claire Connor say within the month? I reckon we must be getting close to that.
How long does it take to look at an absolute shit show of a tour?
It's worth them having a few weeks to do it. I'm not saying they should have just punched it out on and sent an email off and that be that. But that'll be worthy of a long conversation in the weeks to come. So that's the England women. On county stuff, a bit of news here. Ben Sears is signed for Yorkshire. He had that brilliant test debut in Christchurch that we were there for this time last year. So here's a good get there. Wayne Madsen is taking over as the Derbyshire captain at age 41. There's hope for us all, Jeff. There's hope for us all. The great of Derbyshire cricket, Wayne Madsen, is taking on that role. And
looking forward. They've had the refresh. They've had the reset. Looking to the future.
And last one here, last thing we'll say today as well is that, and I was buoyed by this, Will Smead, who was the poster boy for specialising as a white ball cricketer when he retired from red ball cricket before he'd played a county championship game for Somerset at age 21 a few years ago. Well, he's out of retirement. He's eligible to play county championship cricket this year at age 25. And the reason he cited, he didn't feel like he was playing enough cricket. He got injured last year before the 100, wants to play more cricket, played some twos cricket, and I just want to play more. And shouldn't that be the spirit in which we all live our lives? We just want to play more. We just want more. So hopefully Will Smead can make himself into a red ball cricketer now. And why wouldn't he? He's clearly a very capable and talented young player. That's all I've got.
Shahid back out of retirement and ready to go. The theme of our show today. You can unretire as many times as you want. Keep coming back. Greg Matthews still available if called upon. That's been The Final Word. If you want to be part of what we do, patreon.com/The Final Word. Please do. It's great. We're cranking up into 800 plus people who are signed up on there and a bunch of other people who are following along what we're doing on the observation. You can sort of come in as an observer and then decide if you want to commit. So go and check that out and you can see what you can get involved with our community online. And, what are we doing? We've got heaps of stuff coming up through the rest of the month. We've got interviews. We've got story time where we do our history show. We obviously don't have daily shows for a while because the major international commitments have largely finished up until we get back into the English summer. But there'll be a lot of programming nonetheless.
Yeah, interviews. If you haven't listened to the Tony Wilson one, I had a lot of great feedback overnight. Please do that. Our film club. There'll be another book club coming up soon. There is a big interview coming up in the coming weeks. Just need to nail down the logistics of that. Emphasis on the word big. There's something else going on too. Oh yeah. Another good interview in the pipeline as well with an Aussie player. So yeah, all told, it's going to be still a busy period in the feed. The next dailies we have, I guess, Jeff, will be the England Zimbabwe Test match, maybe possibly. It'll be that long, 2.5 full months without daily shows. But it's been great. We've had a long run, starting with the Women's World Cup. Probably starting in last English summer, we've had dailies almost consistently all the way through, with a couple of exceptions where there's been a couple of weeks here, a couple of weeks there. So different kinds of programming, longer form conversations, and of course story time. Initially once a week, and that'll build to twice a week once the county championship starts in the first week of April. That's us done. Thank you for listening. Please join us on Patreon because it's where we make this all happen, and we love you for it. And thanks to Maurice Blackburn, thanks to NordVPN. You know how to do that. Click the links, and we'll catch you on Storytime in a couple of days. Bye.
See ya.